News. Okay, we'll start with this. The latest as it pertains to the reigning WBA bantamweight champion of the United Kingdom, Nina Hughes, who stated, fresh start needed for 2024. Wish Lee Eaton and Let's Go Management all the best for the future, but we will no longer be working together professionally. We have had some ups and down times, made some good memories, and everything in between, but it's time for a change. It would seem that the split is more or less an amicable split, at least publicly, but I have to believe that Nina is discontent with the current situation, and that's what warrants the change, at least in her mind. Lee Eaton, at least up until now, he's managed two of the champions in the women's bantamweight division, Nina Hughes, who I just mentioned, and Dina Thorslund. And I didn't see Dina make an announcement like the one that Nina made, so I'm going to assume that Lee Eaton is still in the Dina Thorslund business, but not the Nina Hughes business. I'd wager that Nina's discontent because she only fought once last year. She had a desire, an expressed desire, to unify titles with Ebony Bridges, but Ebony sat out most of last year and lost her title to Miyo Yoshida towards the tail end of it on the undercard of Haney versus Prograis, which went down here in the United States. I don't think there was a lot that Lee Eaton could do about that, do for Nina in that situation, that Nina wanted an Ebony Bridges fight, but Ebony was out most of the year recuperating from hand surgery, and when she came back, she fought in a tune-up fight. No, I don't think there was a lot that Lee could have done about that, but perhaps what Nina's telling herself is, even if he couldn't get her that fight, he could have gotten her some other fight, maybe fought harder to keep her busy and keep her active, and I'm just bouncing ideas around because I have to believe that Nina is discontent with her current situation if she's now in the market for a new manager. You're not making this change because you're happy with the way things are going. No, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it.
If it is, you hire somebody else. Or maybe Nina's one of these fighters that wants to manage herself.
We still don't know what Miyo Yoshida's gonna do. Is she gonna run it back with Ebony, or is she gonna run it back with Sharita Metcalf?
The Bridges rematch likely pays more than the Metcalf rematch, but Sharita Metcalf is her mandatory challenger.
Boxing is a funny old game. It's a funny old game, this boxing. Sharita Metcalf beats Miyo Yoshida for IBF interim status to challenge for the full title, just for Miyo Yoshida to get that opportunity ahead of her.
Now, even though Sharita already beat Miyo's the champion. Miyo's got the IBF title. She's got the belt. And unless the IBF hands down an order, ordering Miyo to fight Sharita again, she's free to do what she wants.
Could be a rematch with Ebony Bridges or a unification match with Nina.
I think Nina beats her. She's a few years older than Miyo, but I'd pick Nina to win that fight.
And I think for Nina it wasn't personal. It wasn't about fighting Ebony per se, Ebony specifically. It was about unifying titles. It was about picking up a second belt. That's what I think it was about. And if the opportunity were given to her, I think she'd relish it, to fight Miyo Yoshida for 2 alphabet titles instead of just defending the one. Caveat is that Miyo, she might run it back with Ebony. Give Ebony the shot that Ebony gave her, so she might be unavailable. We know Dina Thorslund's unavailable. She's going to be satisfying her mandatory challenger in Serene Satine late next month. Nina Hughes last saw action in June or July of last year, I think it was, opposite the ring then unbeaten Katie Healy, and she took care of business the way I said she would. It hasn't been a full year's time since Nina saw action, and we are in January, so there is still time to squeeze Nina into a show, into a card, say towards the tail end of this quarter.
But it would have to be a keep busy fight.
Wouldn't be a big one, wouldn't be a big fight, not when the biggest name at this weight is Ebony Bridges, and she might be running it back with Miyo, so it's not going to be a big fight, but if nothing else, Nina does need to keep busy. She does need to keep active, certainly more active than she was last year. She only fought once. Only once under the Matchroom banner. She was actually a more active fighter before she joined Matchroom. So the expectation is that when you have a major promotional outfit behind you, you're going to get even better promotion, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So more needs to be done to get Nina out this year. 2, maybe even 3 times if possible, to make up for lost time. Interesting fights there for her at bantamweight. Emphasis on interesting, though not all that big. There is unbeaten up-and-comer from right here in the US of A, Makia Krebs. There's another unbeaten up-and-comer north of the border that goes by the name Amanda Gaye. She's pretty good.
Good fights. though not big ones.
So still interesting, somewhat risky for Nina, but she's got to fight somebody in the absence of a big fight.
Gotta do something.
See what the future holds for the current reigning WBA bantamweight champion, Nina Hughes. In super middleweight news, few words from Christian Mbilli ahead of this past weekend's fight. I hope to have a fight with Canelo Alvarez very soon. He's never fought a boxer like me, which isn't entirely true. Canelo Alvarez has already seen his fair share of mid-range to inside fighters and pressure fighters. Better still, that is what I hope. Mbilli told BoxingScene.com. That's my goal. That's my big goal. I hope to have a fight with Canelo very soon.
Stylistically, it's a fight that favors Canelo. The boxer-puncher versus the pressure fighter favors the boxer-puncher, and that's Canelo.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking he didn't look like a boxer-puncher with Jermell Charlo, and he didn't look like a boxer-puncher with John Ryder. Looked like a pressure guy, a mid-range to inside pressure guy. Well, that's because fighters like Canelo, elite-level fighters like Canelo, they usually toggle between two base styles, not just one. That's what makes them elite, that they are adaptable. And depending on who Canelo's fighting, he can toggle from being a boxer-puncher to being a pressure guy.
Like how Floyd Mayweather might have started out a very fast and very strong boxer-puncher, but as he got older and developed hand issues, transitioned to being more of a pure boxer.
Canelo, like Floyd, he toggles between two base styles, and opposite the ring, a guy like Christian Mbilli, he'd go back to being a boxer-puncher, a counter-puncher, to use Mbilli's aggression against him. Confident Mbilli believes he will dethrone Alvarez if he ever receives that opportunity. I think I would win because Canelo never fought a boxer like me, Mbilli said. I put a lot of pressure on you. I have a lot of punch, and I can box too. I think when I will fight Canelo, give me like 3 months with my trainer, Mark Ramsey, and we're gonna put together some strategy to beat Canelo. I think I have all I need to be a world champion, to be the best of the division.
But Canelo has seen his base style before.
He has.
In different forms, at different weights, with different fighters. Last year, he took on a mid-range to inside fighter, a pressure fighter, in John Ryder.
And I know what you're thinking. Christian Mbilli is a younger, fresher, and fitter fighter, and a bigger fighter than John Ryder. So there is that to be considered. Maybe Canelo has another plan, Mbilli said. Or he wants to make a big fight for big money. I don't know. Mbilli might have to become a mandatory challenger for one of Canelo's titles to either force Alvarez to fight him or give up one of his 4 super middleweight titles, championships. The 2016 Olympian is ranked 3rd by way of the IBF and 5th by way of the WBO. I'm the type of person who wants to do everything fast in my life, said Mbilli, who is co-promoted by Bob Arum's Top Rank. I want to go fast. I want to do everything fast. It has been a bit frustrating for me, but I have to take my time. Wait for my time. It is hard to wait, but I'm sure my time will come.
Mbilli says he's frustrated because he likes to do everything fast. What is an adequate description of his temperament as a fighter, his temperament, and how he fights.
Throws every single punch he throws with bad intentions. Throws every single punch with the same intensity. They're all fastballs. The fan-friendly French contender, based out of Canada, just doesn't want to waste time too much of his physical prime waiting for a title shot. I have the time, yes and no, Mbilli said. I don't want to box at 40 years old, you know. I want to be a world champion quickly, make my money, and that's it. I want to do another thing also in my life.
Mbilli is in a hurry, and he fights that way.
Gift and a curse, really. It's the kind of thing that works up until it doesn't. It's the kind of thing that is going to get you success with some fighters, but not others. Now, Christian Mbilli, as stated, he's a mid-range to inside pressure fighter. So, stylistically, the fight actually favors Canelo. But because Canelo's such a small fighter, he's very small for a super middleweight, you also have to factor in the physicality. That Christian Mbilli, he's a decent-sized super middleweight, very strong, with a great engine.
He's bigger than Canelo.
But so was Callum Smith, with the difference being that this guy's got more inside game than Callum Smith. He's not going to get gun-shy with Canelo Alvarez in front of him the same way that Callum Smith did. Even though Callum was bigger than Canelo, he wasn't a mid-range to inside pressure guy. This guy is.
So even if stylistically the fight favors Canelo, you do have to factor in physicality into the equation. And it's either through his size and his volume and his strength. he overwhelms Canelo, or Canelo catches him in between the shots and knocks him out.
What usually happens to pressure fighters that open up a bit too much in front of boxer punchers, they get knocked out.
And if they don't, they get knocked down.
Because they open up too much. You heard what Christian Mbilli says. He likes to do everything fast. Yeah, he does, you can tell, and that's how he fights. The guy fights like he's in a hurry. He fights like he's got a plane or a train to catch or something. He wants to hurry up and get the guy out of there. Beat him into submission, throwing punches and bunches. And the issue with that is, open up that much against the boxer puncher, a counter puncher who can punch, like Canelo. They'll catch you in between and they'll lay you out.
But it's neither here nor there, because being honest with you, I don't think we're going to get Canelo Alvarez versus Christian Mbilli.
I don't. Being honest with you, I don't think Christian Mbilli is on Canelo Alvarez's radar. Canelo already has roughly 2 mandatory challengers in the queue. 2. David Benavidez by way of the WBC and David Morrell by way of the WBA. Christian Mbilli is not yet one among them, so there's still more work needs doing, and he can either go the WBO route, where Jaime Munguia is ranked at number 1, or the IBF route, where William Skull of Cuba is ranked at number 1.
Christian's an Eye of the Tiger management fighter, and Eye of the Tiger is in bed with Top Rank. David Morrell and David Benavidez, they're with the PBC.
Does Christian's team want those fights for him, or would they prefer to go another route, a less political route that doesn't require them to have to deal with another promotional outfit that might want those fights on their platform? Let's not beat around the bush here. As much as I would like to see Mbilli versus Morrell, or Mbilli versus Benavidez, you guys know just as much as I do. Those fights aren't likely to happen. Those unbeaten up-and-comers, all 3 of them, fighting each other. Hell, David Morrell versus David Benavidez. 2 guys that are on the same side of the street. I don't know if we're gonna get that.
Not while they're unbeaten. Not while they're both in position to fight for a title. I don't know if we're gonna get that. So why would they give this guy the time of day?
They wouldn't. You know they wouldn't. So he may have to go another route. Reroute his efforts towards the WBO or maybe the IBF. I don't begrudge Christian Mbilli's expressed desire to face Canelo Alvarez. That's what he's supposed to want. He's supposed to want to fight that guy because he's this division's undisputed champion and he's the cash cow.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with him saying that. I just don't think he's there yet, and I don't think he's on Canelo's radar.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, a second look at the Joshua versus Ngannou undercard. In my previous video, we talked about the Ray Vargas versus Nick Ball fight down there at featherweight for Ray Vargas' WBC title. Here we see, it's official. Joseph Parker is moving on from Wilder and squaring off against Zhilei Chang.
It's not what I expected.
Up until now, all signs were pointing to a Parker versus Hrgovic fight, a mutual interest from both to face each other. And that's the fight that I thought we were going to get. This fight, I like it a bit better than that fight. I think this is a better and more intriguing fight than the Hrgovic fight would have been. But that means if Parker's fighting Chang, he's obviously not fighting Philippe Hrgovic, but he's also not fighting Deontay Wilder. And the same applies to Chang, that if Chang is fighting Parker, he's not fighting Wilder. Wilder, who they said might return on one of these upcoming Saudi shows, whether it's Joshua versus Ngannou or Fury versus Usyk, he doesn't appear anywhere on this card. Neither does Philippe Hrgovic.
Do they not want to use them?
Really don't know. I don't know if in between now and the time these cards happen, the one in February and the one in March, I don't know if in between now and then additions will be made, additional announcements, additional fights. I really don't know. All I know is neither Deontay Wilder or Philippe Hrgovic appear on the undercards for Joshua versus Ngannou or Fury versus Usyk.
They're not there.
Immediately after the Day of Reckoning card, it was floated out there that Wilder might come back against Zhilei Zhang. And we see that's not the case, but we also see that, I guess, no effort was really made to run it back with Joseph. No effort from Team Wilder was made to run it back with Joseph Parker and avenge that unexpected loss. Where does Wilder go from here? I'm not sure.
But I don't care either. I always thought he was a hype job, and when push came to shove and he had to fight a former champion like himself, he couldn't hack it, in spite of his reputation.
I mean, if this is the end of the Bronze Bomber, and I don't know if it is, but if it is, for me, it's good riddance to bad rubbish. Some felt that he should still get to fight Anthony Joshua, even though he lost to Joseph Parker. What remains of his cult of followers, what remains of Wilder's fans, they still felt that he should get to fight Anthony Joshua, even though he fumbled the bag. He's the one that faltered. He's the one that failed.
Fuck him.
Maybe they bring him back in a rebound fight and he fights a Mark Demori or a Junior Fa kind of guy. Maybe they bring him back against Hrgovic. Maybe they don't bring him back at all and he retires off that loss. Your guess is as good as mine, but I really don't care, and I feel that the Joshua fight, the Joshua versus Wilder fight, it's now dead. You can't revive it.
It's over. It's done. And the show must go on.
Big shows, two very big ones in the month of February and March. Growing concerns in the American marketplace, the American boxing scene. His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh was asked about comments made by Oscar De La Hoya, in which Oscar said some fights shouldn't go to Saudi Arabia, to which Turki Al-Sheikh replied, "We will miss him."
I don't think Oscar needs to worry about the Saudis poaching any of his fighters or any of his shows. I think he's safe.
Though addressing that growing concern that all of the big fights in the sport of boxing may now end up in Saudi Arabia as a result of the cash injections they're making in the sport of boxing. And I've heard that sentiment expressed about the American market and the UK market, that the Saudis are hoarding all the big fights. Well, need I remind you that some of these fights they're making wouldn't happen at all, wouldn't happen if it weren't for the Saudis. Think about how Deontay Wilder, Andy Ruiz, and the PBC had an entire calendar year to make the fight between them, but they didn't make it happen.
It looks like they didn't have the money.
So when you think about a fight like Wilder versus Parker, how would that fight have happened, that battle between former champions, how would it have taken place without the Saudis' involvement, without their money?
And what about Fury versus Usyk? How would that have happened without their involvement? You know, the only reason I think Fury is taking that fight is because the Saudis are paying him a fortune to do it. Underneath it all, I don't think he ever wanted that fight.
And I think if not for the Saudis, we wouldn't be getting it. The same applies to Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Only the Saudis can satisfy the financial demands of both fighters, because in America, it's a great fight for the hardcores, but it's not a big fight for the casuals.
Without the Saudis, that wouldn't be happening.
They're blessing us with these fights that without them wouldn't even take place.